Good evening and welcome to another fantastic edition of Sit Back with Shaq. It's a Tuesday evening. Unfortunately, the weather isn't doing all that great around where we are. So hopefully, keeping our fingers crossed, everything is going to be a-okay. Today, we have a very, very special guest on the show with us and so many things that we would like to talk to him about. And we're all set to go for another great edition of Sit Back with Shaq. And we're going to take a break. We'll be back and introduce our guest for you on tonight's edition right here on the Pod Hub platform, coming to you live right here with Sit Back with Shaq. How are you doing, my friend? It's been a long time we've actually spoken to each other.
First, thank you so much for having me on the show and thinking of getting me on, so that's really much appreciated.
Then I started looking at what can I do now that can make me prepared for the future.
If you've got 4 out of the 6 that we have right, we've actually got about a 5,000 rupee voucher from a lovely little restaurant called Commons.
I'll be myself. People will come and they will go. Who cares? But I will make people happy.
That you mentioned that, actually it's a long time that, you and I have actually known each other.
It's been a long time since I've seen your face.
And make me a better person when I come out of this to be able to deal with it.
I'm happy. Even I can be foolish or joker to make people happy, no problem.
I don't know if you've been there, but they've given us
How do you manage that one? My first job interview was at YesFM when I was 19 or something.
And usually we're freezing to death in some little isolated room, no?
That's true.
Obviously, basic features.
I managed it, Harper. I managed it. Right? If you get it, you'll get that 5,000 rupee voucher.
That sounded really wrong, but where you put it.
Marks a historic year in the annals of St. Thomas's College as it celebrates 100 years in Mount Lavinia. Our alma mater has endured throughout time and stood firm in a world where the only constant has been change. From the day our founding fathers laid the foundation for the school, St. Thomas's College has given back to society 100-fold in the form of responsible corporate citizens which Sri Lanka can be proud of. Founded in 1851 in Mutwal, St. Thomas relocated to Mount Lavinia in 1918. Now, as we celebrate 100 years in Mount Lavinia and look back upon the great years gone by, we must bring our attention to the next 100 years for this elite institution. Change is inevitable. As more and more young Tomians come into college, blissfully unaware of what the future holds for them, we, as the wider Tomian fraternity, have a responsibility toward our alma mater, which nurtured us and turned us from boys to men. We must ensure that the traditions that have been bestowed upon us are carried forward to the next generation. Gentlemen, St. Thomas's needs you. Let us give back to college and ensure that the beautiful traditions that made us men and gentlemen continue in the years to come. Let's rally round our flag for another 100 years and paint young Tomian hearts in blue and black. Let the echoes ring loudly for all we have and are. When we are long gone, and the only thing that will remain of us is a memory, we need to ensure that St. Thomas's stands firm and every year will put forth responsible Tomian citizens into society.
Good evening and welcome back to Sit Back with Shaq on a Tuesday evening, coming to you live on the Pod Hub platform. It gives me great pleasure this evening, of course, to introduce our wonderful guest on the show and so many things that we need to talk about. So before we obviously carry on with what we need to speak about, it's about time for us to obviously introduce our guest. Ladies and gentlemen, here we have, and it's a great honor that we have the Rev'd Marc Billimoria right here on the show with us. Good evening, Father, and welcome to the show Sit Back with Shaq.
Good evening, Shaq. Nice to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. It is an absolute honor to have you on the show with us. And firstly, how have you been keeping up with the lockdown that we've been facing in the last 50 odd days?
Well, it's been an interesting experience, obviously, to be locked down. But since I've been locked down on the campus, I've got a lot of space to walk around, and I've made use of that to keep a little bit fitter than I would have been otherwise. Caught up with reading projects, writing projects, and of course running the school online, which is what we have been doing since the 20th of April.
Which is what we're going to be talking about tonight. So many other stuff also at the same time. Now, with the current COVID-19 pandemic, schools and universities have been indefinitely shut around the world, including right here in Sri Lanka. However, to keep the academics moving, almost all schools have got themselves online right now. Many schools and institutions have already developed their own e-learning system, which is what we're going to be talking to Rev'd Marc Billimoria on the show. Father, firstly, what is college doing in terms of helping students in being in touch with academics and studies during the lockdown?
Well, we didn't really come back to school after we had closed for the big match. So about a week or two after the big match, when we realized that things are not going to come back to normal as fast as we would have thought, we started giving out study packs through our WhatsApp communication groups with the parents. And then we realized the need to go on to something more. And from the 20th of April, we've been having online classes for all grades from grade 6 upwards. And then even more recently, we started having a few contact classes for the primary school as well. So we've kept that part of things going as much as we can. Classes are happening. For the O-level sections, we are doing the 5 core subjects, because we really can't do all the subjects as we would normally have done.
Right.
All the A-level classes are getting the full range of their subjects. And in the lower secondary, which is grade 6 up to grade 9, we are offering as many subjects as we can, given the constraints that parents and children will also be having. So yes, online learning is happening, and we are quite satisfied with the way it's going. Parents are satisfied with the way it's going, and even the teachers, who we were a little worried about, have adapted themselves very well to what's happening to the program.
Okay,
We've also got
sorry, go on.
we've also got sports activities strangely happening online.
Right.
We've got our coaches doing drills and whatever training is possible on the online platforms that we are using. So we're trying to give the students as much as possible online as we are going ahead.
So just before we carry on with more questions that we have for the Reverend on the show, if you've got any questions that you want to basically ask, you can always go ahead and post it on the comment section, and we'll see if you can actually ask Father Marc Billimoria on the show with us and see how it goes. That's actually the first question that's already popped up. Father, are you planning to stop the e-learning if the school reopens? Can't you offer both options, please?
Well, we are looking at some form of blended learning, and certainly when we do come back, when we do come back, we are not going to be able to come back in full strength all at once because of the requirements, social distancing requirements, and the fact that we can't have a class of 35 boys sitting together as they normally would. Right. So we are looking at some forms of blended learning where we bring some students in, some students will have online classes at home. Then when those boys come back, the ones who came to school would have the rest of the week online. So we will have to continue this form of blended learning for a while until we are able to come back in full strength onto the campus for physical classroom work.
Okay, Father, now under the current lockdown, obviously there is a debate that has started, the differences between traditional learning and e-learning, and of course the educational processes that are involved in both different types of learning. When some find traditional classroom learning more effective and helpful, others think e-learning is less time consuming and also flexible. And obviously there is a school of thought that supports both sides, pros and cons, like anything would be. What are your personal views on it? I mean, we did have a brief chat about this before. It looks like all of us have pretty much been thrown into the deep end and said swim, and all schools are swimming the best possible way they can. What is your view on that?
Well, I mean, I do happen to believe that physical classroom learning has, a great benefit because it encourages a lot more than just the learning of the subject. There is that very important aspect of interaction between young people, which is important in a school life.
Right.
So there are the downsides of e-learning where you're on your own. There's some form of isolation taking place. Even though you may meet online, you're still not having the same degree of contact that you would have in a classroom scenario.
Right.
So I would, if you ask me which I would prefer, I would say from an educator's point of view, I would much prefer boys to come to school, to have that time with their friends, to meet physically in that sense. But given the circumstances, we have no choice but to have this at the moment, and to go on with it as we come back to normal with some blended learning. There are pros and cons, as you said, Shaq, and we can't get away from the downsides. But on the other hand, the boys particularly are already very familiar with some of the things, some of the mechanisms that we are using. I mean, they are familiar with their smartphones, with their iPads, with their laptops. They use that sometimes those facilities more than even some of the staff do, perhaps.
Right.
And are more familiar with how to handle some of these gadgets even better than some of us. So, in a sense, they are now beginning to use the facilities that they've had for fun and games before for something a little bit more serious. It's interesting. Our school has a policy of boys not bringing phones to school. And here we are now telling them you've got to use your smartphone or your iPad to keep in touch with the school. So it seems that we've had to change our way of thinking on that score. So, I mean, there are pros and cons. And certainly there's even a school of thought that children who are somewhat younger, perhaps from grades 1 to 3, should not have too much exposure to digital technology because of the possible impact it has on their development. And there are lots of, there's a whole body of research out there warning educators about this.
Right.
So, I mean, as with everything, we've got to take what we can, what is good, and be careful about, keeping aside what is bad about all this. But if you ask me, my preference, certainly to have the school bustling and buzzing with the sound of young boys running around and enjoying school life. That is certainly the preference for all of us.
You must certainly be missing that buzzing noise in school. It must be eerily quiet in the last 50 odd days or so.
Absolutely. I mean, the first few days after, a rushed first part of the term, it seemed like it was a welcome change. But then as we went into the lockdown, we realized, it's just, the school is just dead. It's just empty buildings. And there's no soul in the school without the children.
Right. Father, now obviously in terms of college, now you did touch on the fact that the students are pretty much well versed with their smartphones and the tablets and iPads and so on and so forth. How difficult was it to get the faculty to jump on board with this online course? Because all through their teaching career, they have been used to teaching in front of kids. And there's a different mechanism altogether before this online process came about, and they have to completely shift their teaching patterns. How difficult was it to actually get the faculty on board, and how receptive were they towards this?
Well, we have started moving to the use of smart boards across the school.
Right.
Some sections of the school have been using smart boards for almost a year now. and and the staff who work in those sections are used to this type of technology. We were worried when we were going to go online that there will be teachers who would find it difficult, but we are really, really encouraged by the way in which they've adapted. They've hit the ground running, and the way that our classes are being conducted. I mean, I'm getting extremely good feedback from the parents about the effectiveness of the teaching that is taking place. So even some of them who are perhaps a little nervous about the technology, even as I am nervous about doing what I'm doing with you right now, they've taken to it.
I just have to stop you there. I just have to stop you there, Father. This is the first time the Father Marc Billimoria has done something live, so it's a great honor for us on the show. So, like we said, we obviously will guide him through this. On that note that you were saying, the parents obviously were stating the fact that they're very happy with what's going on. Clearly, because I suppose the boys are far more disciplined right now because they're at home.
Well, that's an important aspect of what we've realized is that the teachers are saying to me that there's better discipline with the children online than they had when they were in actual classrooms. So there's something in it. Yes, I think the parents are keen that we have these classes going on, because then the children will be occupied. They will continue with their learning. I mean, there are some who feel that we don't need to pressurize the children with academia at this time. It's a stressful time for them.
Right.
There's a lot of uncertainty, and the children too go through these things. So we're not really pushing too much onto the children. We're just keeping them basically in touch with the subjects that we can offer. And also, as I said, for the most junior children, having contact with the teachers, doing something creative, and enjoying that little time that they get with the teachers. But we don't want to pressure the kids too much, even though we are doing these online classes.
Father, now the thing is that we want to basically find out, yes, it's all well and done that we all moved on to online courses, etc. But there is certainly a cost factor that is involved in this. Clearly, there's a lot of data cost that goes into play.
Yeah.
And how is the school combating that? I mean, considering the fact that obviously all kids should be able to, firstly, they should actually have equipment that is compatible with the online resource or online software that is being handled. And also at the same time, there is a massive data cost. And how's the school handling it?
Well, this is one of the realities that we are going to have to face, Shaq, and that's not just for St. Thomas's, but I'm sure it's the same for all schools. The schools in the government sector have the advantage of receiving a great amount of data free,
right,
as government schools. But since we are classified as a private school, even though we are a government-approved private school, we do not have that. We do not have access to free data, like most international schools as well. So this accessibility to the data accessibility is going to be a problem. Already we have some feedback coming through to us. For example, in a family of maybe 2 or 3 kids who go to different schools or even come to the same school, to have them all going online with the data limitations can be a problem. So this raises the bigger question about the equitable nature of online education in a country where you may not have everyone with the ability to access this type of education. And this is a major concern for us in the field of education. Are we able to give everyone the equal opportunities online? Because it's not just data, it's also the hardware that is required. It's the smartphones or the tabs or the laptops or desktops or whatever is required for online learning to be effective. It's just not possible for every child to have everything the same way, and that's a concern for us. Now, you might imagine that this is something that would affect schools maybe in the outstation areas, the rural areas, or poorer parts of the country. But even in urbanized cities and towns, even in schools like St. Thomas's and perhaps even other comparable schools, there are children who will not be able to afford the data as well as the hardware that is required. And this is a concern for us. For us here at St. Thomas's, thanks to our Old Boys Association who have come round to support us, we are able to get some equipment so that the boys who do not have and contact us are given these things for their use. But when it comes to data, there's very little that we can actually do.
So that was just going to be my next question, as a matter of fact. What has the school done? Because if data is actually an issue with the school right now, how are you conducting your classes? Are you conducting the classes on a daily basis? Are you rationing out data? How is it working out?
Well, we offer, as I said, for the primary school, just 2 days a week. For the secondary school, we're offering about 3 days a week. And we spread it out for all the sections of the school. So it's not a 5 day a week, 8 periods a day scenario.
Right.
So we are conscious of that. We are also conscious that we have to offer the children the opportunity for physical education. As I said, our coaches and trainers are doing things online, right. Giving fitness programs and all that. So we need the children to be able to access those facilities as well. And so we are trying to help them to balance whatever data they have. At the moment, the teachers are managing with the data packages in their homes. We may come to a situation where the school finds a way to help them with that at some point, but at the moment they're doing it on their own steam, and that's for us something that we're very thankful to the teachers for. And the majority of the children who are online are accessing it without much of a problem, but as I said, there are those who are unable to, and we are trying to do study packs with them and send them things in other ways that they can keep in touch with the system.
Wonderful. Lots more questions that we need to ask Rev'd Marc Billimoria, of course, the Warden of St. Thomas's College in Mount Lavinia, right here on Sit Back with Shaq. And we also spoke to some students in regards to exactly what their feeling is in terms of the online courses that the college is offering right now. Right after this break, we will basically have those videos for you. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right here. Sit Back with Shaq on a Tuesday evening. Coming to you live on the PodHub platform, and of course we're talking to Rev'd Marc Billimoria, the Warden of St. Thomas's College in Mount Lavinia, and we're talking about what the schools have actually got themselves involved in right now, something completely different to what they've been doing for years and years, possibly decades right now. It's a completely different process altogether. It's online learning because of the pandemic that we are going through right now. We also spoke to some kids of St. Thomas's College, some kids of certain stature, and this of course is the cricket captain of St. Thomas's College, and I want to ask him exactly how he feels about the whole online process that is going on at the moment with college, and this is what he had to say.
I'm missing my friends and practice a lot actually, because it's very hard to not get away from that routine and just stay in lockdown, and didn't even get a chance to see my friends for at least 2 or 3 months now. It's been very difficult actually. Online lectures are alright, but it's not engaging as being in a classroom actually, and I find it very difficult to understand certain topics. The biggest challenge is adapting to the new online system, and to do virtual studying is much harder, and in like accounts and all, I need to understand it a little bit more, because when you're closer to the teacher, you can ask her anything, or him or her anything, so there'll be a good relationship between the student and the teacher. So traditional methods are better, because in a traditional classroom we can directly share our views and clarify our own questions with the teacher. So in my opinion, traditional method is the way to go.
Traditional method is the way to go. But I'm sure, kids are also finding it sort of difficult to adapt to something. This is, just as much as the teachers are, kids are also finding it difficult to adapt to it. But on the side of the teachers, obviously the process of preparing for a lesson for a traditional teaching method is also completely different for an online method. What are the views that the teachers have actually spoken to you about that?
Well, the feedback we are getting is that preparing for an online class involves a lot more work. Surprisingly, I mean, one
Okay.
would imagine that you can get away with not doing too much when you're online, but the preparation of the lesson is supposed to be far more complicated than it is if you're preparing for a lesson in front of a blackboard in front of 35 students. That's the basic feedback that we've been receiving. And I mean, I must commend my teachers because they've really risen to the challenge, and despite that difficulty, they've been doing very well from what I've been hearing.
Father, now in terms of online courses that you've introduced at college right now, like you said, there is completely a different way of looking at it from the primary kids, and of course, I'm sure there are quite a few kids who are sitting for their A levels also at the same time, and those are the kids that need absolute attention too. And when it comes to something like a massive exam like the A levels, it's more of a one-on-one that is required. Sometimes you also have a one-on-one session with the kids after school, possibly. Now, does it completely cut off the whole position, a whole idea of a one-on-one extra help with the online courses that are on right now?
Well, the school offers the timetable as we do for the week with the online class, but we do have teachers who are on their own initiative do have that one-on-one
Right.
with students who request it.
Right.
So we do have that. I mean, it's like a tutorial. You know, you can have a tutorial like we are having this chat now. You can have a tutorial online, and there are teachers who are offering it for students who have asked for that help. But what we offer from the school's point of view is a timetable for the week for the A-level classes. As I mentioned at the beginning, the A-level classes are the boys are receiving all their subjects together with assignments that they can complete at home and return. We are on the Google Classroom platform.
Right.
So there you can share assignments. You can submit your assignments, have them corrected and then given back and things like that. So that has its advantage. But you know, the private, the tuition element, as it were, is available on request. But in general, we just offer the general thing because of the fact, as I mentioned earlier, about the data. You know, there's a limitation on that.
So, Father,
But we are open to more personalized education on that.
yes, that's great. So, Father, now in terms of returning or resumption of schools, do you have any indication? Because we just resumed work, so to say, gradually, just yesterday, and hopefully we'll see how things pan out. But is there any indication of how you are looking at possibly at which point the schools might be back?
Well, nothing official has come to us. We do hear from time to time statements made, but nothing official has come to us. What we are doing at the moment is getting ready for whenever it happens. How we are going to come back, what are we going to do, what classes come back first, how are we going to stagger it, what sort of blended learning are we going to have. So we are getting ready for it, but we really don't know when it's going to be. There's just a lot of supposition about it. And this is not something that's just for our schools, it's the whole country basically.
That's right.
There is a presidential task force on education looking into every aspect of continuing education without a break for universities and schools. And this is one of the things that they will grapple with. How do we get back to some level of normalcy even when we do come back? And how do we continue education without a break until then?
Father, here's an interesting question that I want to ask you about. Obviously, I like what you said, blended learning, which is something that we're going to be hearing more as we go along in the next couple of months or possibly years. Now, let's talk about the education system that we have right now, and in terms of what we are requesting or requiring the students to do, which all of us have actually gone through, is the fact that take the textbook and memorize every single thing. Now, obviously, with blended learning that is involved in the world today, that means there's more interaction that's actually coming into play.
Yes.
So, can we look at a point from this point onwards that there's going to be a shift in terms of an education process helping towards blended learning, helping towards more interaction, helping towards more skill-oriented examinations without necessarily it being just memory?
Yes, well, I mean, that's a very good question that you asked, because as I mentioned a little while ago that we have this task force in place looking at education.
Right.
And one of the tasks that has been assigned to this group and to another functional committee that has been set up is to actually look at how we reform the present education system for schools, general education, in line with where we want to be.
Right.
So the whole education 4.0, getting the students ready for the new world, is something which this task force and this particular special group on general education is doing even now. They are looking at possible reforms that are being considered. One of the big ones would be a move away from just a knowledge-based evaluation system. And we hope that if such a proposal is made, that the policymakers would accept it, because we really do need to move away from this thing of just mugging up what you read in a textbook and reproducing that at an exam and getting yourself 9 A's,
Right.
but not really getting anything more than that. So
Right.
there is a recognition that we need to move away from what we have at the moment, going into something that is skills-based as well as knowledge-based, where competencies will be strengthened, where creativity would be encouraged, where critical thinking would be encouraged, innovation would be encouraged. And so if the reforms that the task force is going to propose at some point are accepted by the policymakers, I think there will be a huge change in the entire education system of this country. And that is something which I, as an educator, would very much look forward to.
Excellent. I just want to ask you that question now. Now, there is a question that's actually appeared on our screen right now, which actually was going to be something I want to touch on. With kids being online so much today, and they are pretty much forced to be online, what security and safety features are there for students when they come online? Lalit wants to know.
Well, when we went into online learning, one of the first things we did was to send out some guidelines to the parents, because online security is a big issue for young people today. We all know the issues of cyberbullying and other things, predators online, etc.
Right.
So very conscious of that,
Right.
we put out some guidelines to the parents, and we said, look, when your children are online, monitor their online usage, be aware of what they're doing online. We've not advocated anything draconian,
Right.
but what we are saying is just be aware
Right.
what your child is doing online, and who your child is interacting with while he's online, etc. So we've given those guidelines, very carefully drawn up guidelines,
Right.
and our parents at least have those guidelines, and I'm sure this is the same with all schools. There are guidelines in place to ensure security and safety. Plus, we are also taking very seriously the body of research out there about the impact on digital technology on the growing the growing mind,
Right.
and how it can have a negative impact. So we would rather the youngest or the younger members of the school community not spend too much time online, because of that whole body of research that says that it can have a negative impact. I mean, we have one of our old boys, a medical doctor who has done a lot of research into this area, and he has published books on the subject as well. And we are taking those warnings quite seriously when it comes to that. So we've advised the parents, we've told them what the possible dangers are and how they should take care of the kids while they're online with us.
Okay, Father, let me just go back to the previous question we were discussing before we addressed that question that came up in terms of this massive change in the education system. If the policymakers do accept the proposals that is being put forward, and it's wonderful to know that you're also proposing this for the change. Let me just try and rephrase this question. What would be the impact in Sri Lanka when this change actually does happen? Because for hundreds of years, this is the only method that we've known. We've all gone through this. We've all need to basically bury ourselves in textbooks and possibly, even talk loud to make sure that we understand and memorize this. What is the shift going to do, and how is the shift going to be adopted by the next generation compared to what we went through?
Well, I think one of the big changes that will come is that we will be preparing children in school for what they would actually be wanting to do out there.
Right.
There will be more correlation between the education they receive in school and what they would want to do in later life. So even giving them a choice of choosing a stream at A level, we would say let them choose it at grade 9, even before O level, so that they prepare themselves. There's that relationship between what they would want to do as a career and as a profession or a vocation is founded upon what they do in school.
Right.
So it's not just what you know, but the type of person you are, the skills you possess, the competencies that you have, that will finally decide where you go. And that process will begin in school rather than you wait until the end of your A levels.
That's right.
To think about what you want to do with your A level.
That's right.
There are so many children who are forced into straitjackets at A level.
Right.
By over-enthusiastic parents who think that every child should be a nuclear physicist or a top-class surgeon or an engineer who will go to the moon, without even considering what the strengths and the basic skills and interests and the aspirations of the child may be.
Right.
So an education system that recognizes each individual child's strengths and areas of interest is what we really need to be aiming for, rather than everyone following the same thing in the standardized way that we're offering it at the moment, which just sends them out on a production line as they were meant to be in the time that this education system was formulated.
So this looks like a God-given break also for the education system to relook at itself, like we are relooking at everything.
Absolutely. And if educators take this opportunity to do that, it will be hard. I'm not saying it's going to be easy to unlearn decades and decades of a system that we have inherited. But at the same time, it's going to be an exciting journey, because at the end of it, we are going to have something that is new, that is fresh, and that actually recognizes that each child is unique and has gifts and strengths of his or her own.
Wonderful. All right, we're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, we've obviously got somebody else, someone from school, of course, who is another individual of stature, who's going to be talking to us on the show. We'll be back right after this. A quick break for you on the show with Sit Back with Shaq. You live on the PodHub platform. I look like a ghost right now. We've actually had a bit of a technical issue, so we have to sort of basically make do with a few flashlights we have at home. So this is exactly what, unfortunately, technology can do to you. Everything seems so fine, but one fine moment, things happen that you just don't expect. And yeah, I hope you can see me, but I'm not the most important person on this. It's the warden, and as long as you can see the warden, we're fine. You just need to hear me. Okay, so we've got a couple of more videos for some students that we actually spoke to from St. Thomas's College in Mount Lavinia on their views on the online process and online courses that the college is offering right now. Take a look.
So yeah, I'm missing school. I miss seeing my friends, hanging out with them, having some fun. Also, I'm missing the rugby a lot. I miss seeing and having some fun with my teammates, some practices and all. But it's tough that the season was stopped. But looking at the world, like most of all the other sporting events are stopped, like the Olympics, the Premier League, they were all stopped. So yeah, can't do anything about that. So the online school has been done on either Zoom or on Google Classroom. I've been coping well with it. It's been going well. I had a few exams last week, and teachers were really helpful, and it went smoothly. Personally, I have no issues with getting access to the internet and all, probably because I'm the only one in my family that's still learning. But my concerns are the people who could not get the internet access, and families that have more than 3 or 4 kids, because they probably have only 1 or 2 devices. So I would like to go back to school and see my friends, hang out with my friends and have some fun. But given the current situation in the school, I think best option would be to have a hybrid, where there would be about 2 to 3 days and the rest would be online. That will have a big impact for not only us, but even teachers would be less stressed out, even parents. There will be less traveling pressure, and yeah, there will be less pressure on everyone.
So there you go. That was the captain of the St. Thomas's College Mount Lavinia First 15 rugby team, Rev'd talking to us. And just before we obviously have a few more questions for the warden, here's another student from St. Thomas's College, and let's see what he had to say about online learning that is being offered by the college.
Yes, it's been very difficult. I've been missing my friends, the discussions we have had as friends, and all the interactions and the fun that we have had amongst one another in the classroom or just playing outdoors. Also, I've been missing physical activity and bonds as teams, as sports teams. However, fitness sessions virtually are being conducted these days, but as a squash player, it has been difficult for me to get onto a court and really practice, and I feel it will be a bit difficult for me to get back into form once we go back to normal as well. And something that I personally am missing a lot. St. Thomas's College is widely popular for its beauty, and I've just been missing going to the chapel, seeing that beautiful mural and the architecture of the chapel, as well as the architecture of our blocks, the classrooms, walking through the quadrangle and around school. I've been missing that a lot, and I've been getting updates from those residing in school, the warden, the sub-warden, and the chaplains, that school is very dull without us, and I'm certain that St. Thomas's College is missing us as much as we are missing her. Yes, online school has been working out well thus far, and is, in my opinion, is definitely the best way to learn during this lockdown, while giving our health and safety top priority. I'm able to attend 2 periods per week for each of my subjects, and the syllabus is being covered for the A-level exam by our teachers, who are working tirelessly to prepare presentations, homework, notes, and so much more. A big thank you to them for all their hard work. Additional homework too is being done throughout the week and shared among teachers and students through email or the online Akura portal. In terms of challenge, timetables have been cut down from 40 periods a week to 8 periods a week, which is a challenge in terms of completing our syllabus to face a public exam such as the A-levels, which I will sit for next August. Also, the lack of face-to-face interaction with teachers and fellow students, as we all know it, is not possible, and asking questions or getting clarity on something that is unclear is much more difficult through this online schooling. Given the current situation, yes, definitely. But there are pros and cons in both online and traditional learning. Online classes have been more time efficient, as the commute to and from school takes quite some time for me personally, at least. Learning online has given us the freedom to have more student-friendly school hours, with classes starting later in the morning than traditional classes. For me, online classes start at 9 a.m. and school is held only on 2 days of the week. It is almost as though weekends have become weekdays and vice versa. I'm sure almost all of our students would love to have our education system practice these school hours. Traditional classes give us the opportunity to interact face-to-face with our teachers and ask for help with anything that we are struggling with. And our teachers would go to any extent to ensure that we fully understand what was taught, either by spending time with us individually during that period or during an interval or after school has finished. Also, the distraction of pop-up notifications from social media, and so on that occur during our online classes affect our concentration spans. Thus, the traditional classroom helps students have a better concentration and focus to what is being taught. According to a study done by the University of Columbia, 90% of their students who enroll in online courses, either drop out or fail the course due to the above reasons. Therefore, in the long run, I would personally prefer traditional teaching, but it could be updated with some practices from the online classroom.
Thanks a lot, Sarit, of course, from St. Thomas's College. And looks like everybody wants to come back to school, Father. It's not something that you obviously hear the kids say all the time, I want to go to school, but everybody wants to come back to school now.
Yes, it looks like that, doesn't it? And when they come back to school after a short time, they'll wish for online learning again.
It's a vicious cycle we can't get out of. Right, so we've obviously spoken about the serious stuff on the show and about online learning versus traditional learning, and this is something that we're going to go on for a long time in the foreseeable future. Now, Father, let's talk about you a bit. And in terms of, you're an old boy from college. You were in college from 1980 to 1990. And soon after that, you joined the faculty. When all the other kids would have possibly pursued higher studies, you decided to join the faculty. What was the reason for that?
You're going back in history, Shaq. You did warn me about this.
No, that's the thing. I mean, I was very respectful. I told you exactly the stuff that we were going to talk about, but this is, we have to, spring a surprise or two.
Just as I finished my schooling, I was given a small project to undertake for the college by the warden at that time, Mr. Neville Dialvis. And he basically wanted me to compile the history of the school because history was my subject. And he said, until you get into university, why don't you come onto the staff, do some teaching and write the history. So that's what I did. And that got me into the whole world of teaching, of education. And even after I finished the project, I opted to remain on the staff till I went off to university. And then when I finished university, he actually didn't let me resign. He said, you go off to university while you still remain on the staff. So he gave me no pay leave.
Right.
And he said, you go away, you get yourself your degree and you come back because this is the place for you. And so I did that and taught for a little while longer until there was no escaping a higher call, if you could call it that.
Right.
To join the priesthood. And so then I went off in that direction, not ever thinking that I would come back into education. So, I mean, everything happens in ways that you can't plan.
Yep, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah, so that's how it happened.
Talking to some of the old boys, quite a few of the old boys, and most of them actually sent me messages the moment they saw the social media post that we were going to be talking to you on the show. I think every single person I actually spoke to, what they said, I quote, I had to write this down, I quote, it says, truly what college needs, especially in a time like this, is you, Warden. And it's almost everybody, all the old boys that I actually spoke to had that to say about you. But how much pressure does this have on you, especially when you know that you're actually responsible for 2,900 kids in college? Not only them, but also their parents, and who look up to you for the guidance and look up to you to make sure that their children actually guided down the right path. How much pressure does that actually have on you?
If you see the photograph of me before I became warden and look at me now, you will know what's happened. I had more hair on my head. It was black. No, I mean the responsibility is immense, and it is sometimes quite humbling and scary as well. It's not just students, it's not just parents, it's also a large family. I mean, I've got a staff of over 200. I've got teachers, I've got administrative staff, I've got support staff, I've got coaches. And it's I mean, at this particular time in the school's life, and of course in all schools' lives, we've got to look at, all of them. we can't just think about one segment of our family. And that is quite a daunting prospect, and how are we going to support the family? It's like being a parent of a huge family of over 3,000 souls,
Right.
and thinking about on a daily basis, how am I going to support this family in the ways that they need to be supported. Thankfully, I've got co-workers who support me. I've got a fantastic group of co-workers led by my sub-warden, and that is something which I'm thankful for, because it helps to take the burden off sometimes. I've got old boys who support the school in very, very encouraging ways. I just sent out an appeal to the old boys to help out certain projects that we have, and the response has been overwhelming response, solidarity with the school. We've got staff showing solidarity with other members of staff who are in need. We've got parents showing that to other parents who are in need. So it's a family that transcends boundaries, and in a sense, as the warden, I have to head that family.
Right.
And that's a huge responsibility, and one that is not taken lightly. I can assure you of that.
Yeah, of course. Father, now we're obviously going to be we've spoken about the serious stuff on the show. We just got about 10 more minutes to go on a Tuesday evening. Now it's about time for us to just actually do what the show is supposed to do: sit back and relax. Okay, so we've got a few very off the cuff sort of questions for you. You can be yourself as always. You can just take a sip of your preferred tea, that which you're doing right now, which is perfectly fine. Couple of questions for you, Father. Now, first one.
Yeah.
As a schoolboy, what was your best big match memory?
Oh, definitely 1988, when we won the big match after 24 years. It was my first big match victory in my life, so it was certainly an interesting one. But as the situation would have it, I was not able to get to the grounds in time to see that particular aspect of the victory, because our vehicle had been copped somewhere in Kolpeti. But it was a very interesting big match for us, because it was the first time that our friends, our batch, had ever seen a big match victory.
Right.
It was after 24 years, 1988, when our team, led by Anura Bulankulama, pulled off a historic win.
Right. Okay, here's the second question. As a warden or a sub-warden, which was the most memorable big match and why?
I think for me, last year was the greatest big match victory memory for me as warden.
Right.
It was the victory. We were able to win the match convincingly, and the coveted trophy was back in the trophy cupboard. It was immensely satisfying to be there and to rejoice with the whole school family as we achieved that victory. So for me, last year's big match, certainly 2019.
Okay. Question number 3. When you were a student, what is the one thing that you didn't like about your warden?
Oh dear. My warden he ended up as my mentor. So there's very little that I remember that I didn't like. But I suppose what would it be? I suppose he was passionate about cricket. Cricket
Right.
was for him the king of all sports.
Right.
And perhaps if as a schoolboy, if I remember as a schoolboy, perhaps there was a little bit of discomfort with the fact that cricketers could get away with anything when he was warden. but he was in my view, I've done the history of the college, and I would say even now, in the second half of the 20th century, he was probably the greatest warden that we've had.
Wow. Okay. Your fourth question. What is the one thing that you said to yourself that you will do differently when you became the warden?
Well, one of the things that I've always tried to do is to treat everyone with a measure of equality, and not give anyone a overinflated sense of importance. So I've always tried to treat all the students of the school, no matter where they came from, who they were, whether they joined us at A level or whether they came to us at grade 6, or even if they've been with us all along from grade 1. I've always wanted to treat all of them equally as full members of the school community, without any discrimination of any sort. And I hope that I've been able to fulfill that desire.
Here's a final question, Father. What is the one thing that you want to be remembered as the Warden of St. Thomas's College, Mount Lavinia?
Oof, that's a tough one. Well, I mean,
what is the legacy that you
been-
would like to leave behind, Father?
I would like to leave behind the school as our founder intended it to be,
Right.
a school where every student was respected for who he was as a human being, a school where boys of all faiths and all ethnicities, all classes would be one and the same, part of the same family without any difference being shown. I would like our college to be a mini, a mini country, a country where everyone has a sense of equality and a sense of security, and where coexistence is the hallmark that makes us special.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Reverend Marc Billimoria, on the show with us now. One final thing that we need to do before we do let you go. Honestly, it has been an absolute honor, Father, to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Like any school, obviously schools are bound by rules and regulations. Sometimes rules and regulations don't necessarily are accepted by the students. Some, of course, are questioned by the students, and they're there for a reason. Some say rules are there to be broken. I don't know how things go about, but what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to basically give you 5 rules that are actually in existence, possibly in existence around the world, and all you need to do is tell me if you think that rule in school is true or not. Simple as that. I'm not saying you need to adopt it to college. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, gonna throw it to you and see if it's true or not. Here's the first one. Let me know if it's true or false. Students are not allowed to wear more than one good luck bracelet for exams. Do you think it's true or false?
False.
False is not the right answer. It's actually true, Father. It is true. And this is in Cuba, I think. Yeah. In Japan. Sorry, they're just mouthing the answer to me. In Japan. Yeah, thank you. All right. The second one for you, the second rule. Schools controls the amount of ketchup students can use during meals at school.
I suppose that's true.
It's true. It's true. And this is actually in France, believe it or not. It's actually in France, okay? This is the third one. Parents are the only ones who appraise the teachers and not the school administration.
False.
Absolutely right. False. And I can see the absolute strictness in your face when you obviously said false in that one. Yes, it is false. It is false. This is your fourth question, Father. Students have to renounce their religious beliefs when enrolling at school.
False.
False it is. False it is. And here's your fifth one. Teachers are not allowed to grade papers in red pens.
Ooh. True in some contexts.
The answer is true. Thank you so much. Obviously, it's been an absolute pleasure, Father, for you to be on the show, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation. We learned so much as to exactly what college is doing right now, and before we do let you go, I know you miss the students so much, and from the number, obviously, of the views that we have so many who are actually watching you right now on the show. Any final message that you have for the students and their parents from the Warden of St. Thomas's College?
Well, just to say that, boys, stay safe, stay well, and we look forward to having you back as fast as possible. God bless.
Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Don't worry about the glare that's on my face. It's all technical difficulties that is going on right now. But I had such a great time, and I sincerely hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did, Father.
Thank you very much, Shaq. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yes, that's of course the Warden of St. Thomas's College, Mount Lavinia, on the show with us this evening, Tuesday evening. We learned so much as to exactly what the college is doing and as to exactly where it is going in terms of their online courses. Thanks so much for being a part of the show. Another great show right here on a Tuesday evening, coming to you live on the Pod Hub platform. We'll see you once again Thursday evening as we got another special guest for you. Till then, have yourself a wonderful night. Don't forget, stay home, stay safe, and good night.